This is the voice of the New York Football Giants, Bob Papa, and you are listening to the best throughout Europe, the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. Proudly, as always, in association with Andy's Man Club. Lads, remember, it is okay to talk. As you can see, if you are watching, we are 66% British, 33% Irish, but as always, 100% Giants. It is a first for the YouTube era of Big Blue UK and Ireland, as we have our first head coach firing to talk about live and in person. We're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty as to how we feel in a bit. Obviously, we're also going to talk about that Bears game, but albeit briefly, and then maybe touch on a few more talking points after some of the recent episodes where we've gone on a little bit rogue. I think the less structured, the better for this evening. And joining me this evening, as you can see, are Shane and Kev. How are we, boys?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah. First time in a while I've looked forward to a podcast, in all honesty. It's kind of something we're going to get into. But yeah, we're going to get into what happened on Sunday and then kind of the aftermath from that as well. But Craig, just a quick question for you. Did you try and find the most depressing photo of Brian Daboll from Sunday that you could find in that picture in the bottom left corner?
Right, I'm gonna hold my hands up, okay? As many of you know, I do the graphics for the Irish NFL show as well. And that was the picture that Brian sent to me and said, can you just whip together something in case it happens? And I've just run with the picture because it makes me laugh. And as Chris rightly said on our X account, he does look a little bit like an Ewok there as well. So,
well, chaps, The podcast we thought we'd never do well. We wouldn't do for a long time. And here we are doing it tonight. Brian Daboll's finally been fired. We threw away another game from a winning position. I mean, it had to happen. I'm looking forward to getting into the weeds with you boys tonight. Like you said, we haven't really got proper structure tonight, but we've certainly got lots and lots of talking points. So get your comments in as well, get your questions in, and we'll address them on the show. But I'm looking forward to this one.
Yes, it's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, there's plenty of people in the comments already. I mean, I do like that one of the sacking of Daboll has brought Shane and Kev back together after you seem to miss each other on the pods every so often. Aaron is watching along, just wants to say that he hopes that Daboll does a good job at Penn State there.
There's just no need. There was just no need. It's been just over 24 years and you're trying to push the man onto my college team, which is already having a shit year as it is. Like, it don't need to get any worse. Like, let's just stop with this. I think Holty put it in the group chat as well earlier. Like, let's stop putting this out in the universe. The universe doesn't need to know about that as an option.
I mean, what were your thoughts about him being pictured the day after he's been fired, wearing the Penn State uniform rather than the Giants? Yeah, I didn't know he was a Penn State man.
I mean, the big talk with getting the new head coach at Penn State is that obviously the Indiana guy is one guy that they've been hired, which doesn't look likely. But the other one was Matt Rule because he's former Penn State, and there you got Daboll out there, and I'm like, please no, don't do this. But to be fair, I think he could actually be a better head coach at the college level than at the NFL level. To be honest with you, I think he can probably get away with a little bit more at the college level. And if Penn State were interested in him, I could certainly see the appeal with it, without a doubt.
Maybe it was a little subliminal message to say, say out there, look, I wanted to keep Saquon Barkley. Maybe it was a little throw out there to little Barkley.
Yeah, I like that.
I love that conspiracy theory, Kev.
Yeah. as you will tell from last week, we were well on the conspiracy theory train. And yeah, we're carrying on. Right. before we begin properly, if you are watching this on YouTube, X, or Facebook, please do give this a repost, get involved in the comments, like the video, subscribe if you aren't already, hit the notification bell. All you audio listeners, please do rate us on your podcast platform of choice. No Aaron, so I will do it 5 stars. Please, thank you very much. And just while we're talking about the Facebook side of things, sorry, not the Facebook side of things, the YouTube side of things, please do give this a thumbs up, because it really does help with the algorithm and getting the word out there. We are starting to see a little bit more of an uptick in traction, which is amazing. And it's the easiest way that you guys can help us out. And it takes 2 seconds, literally, just to press that like button, and it can get us out to more people, which is always good. Spread the word of the UK and Ireland Giants. Let's have a look at the game then. As you will see from the bottom there, or obviously if you watch the game, which some of you may have done, probably not all to the end, probably turned off after a while, but there we go. Giants 20, Bears 24, another fourth quarter collapse for the Giants in Chicago, took their season to 2-8. The big turning point was in the third quarter with the Giants up 17-7. Dart fumbles the ball as he picks up the first down deep in Bears territory. You kind of think to yourself that if he doesn't fumble it there, we probably punch it in and go up 3 scores. So it really is a big turning point. And the bit that was the worst of all was the sort of hit that he took to the head, which knocked him out cold. I think you can see from that alternative angle that he was out cold on the floor. And I think somebody turned around and said, Dart is not the kind of person to not go searching for the ball when he's on the floor. So you could kind of see that he was out. And then he starts the next possession and plays two snaps before it goes to the end of the third. And Brian Daboll apparently sees him and goes, "Oh no, you're not looking good. Go off to the doctors." And there you go. He's taken out the game. He's in concussion protocol, and that's it. We then watch Russell Wilson come into the game. They do make a field goal on that drive. That first drive that he's there, he's not involved. It is a lot of running plays. We lent on Tracy and Singletary quite a lot in that drive. And then we just stagnate. And then so much so that we kick the field goal, we're given the opportunity to go up to get a touchdown from the 1 yard line. Yes, it's one play. I get it's 4th down, but you're on the 1 yard line. If you go for it and you get stopped, they have to go 99 yards. Like, it's a law of averages. And that right there, and I'm going to put it up here, Kieran said it, opting to kick a field goal when on the half yard line sealed his fate. And he's right, it did. I think we called it out on Twitter, and we got some kickback from people saying that's that, because I was quite vocal about that play, and I said that's coaching to, not to lose rather than coaching to win. And a lot of people were like, yeah, but we went up by 2 scores. We were perfectly fine. We're still up by 2 scores. I just think, if you think that Brian Daboll's tenure started with what he did with the Titans game, where he went for 2 in that Titans game, they obviously missed the field goal, and we end up winning the game there rather than tying the game and it go into overtime. So he was ballsy enough then, but as we saw across the tenure, the Daboll's kind of name kind of just it went down as we went. Special teams took centre stage again, and it was the kicking game yet again that took centre stage, but not the place kicking, but the punting. What can you say? Jamie Gillan had already popped 2 kickoffs out of bounds, was taken off kickoff duty for Koo to take over, who incidentally was perfect for every kick that he had to make on Sunday. And then we really just needed one of those big Gillan booming punts to really push the Bears back, and he shanks it, and that was it. You knew the second he shanked it that it was game over, and by that point we could already see the momentum changing. All of this, we haven't even spoken about a defense that couldn't lay a glove on Caleb Williams, and when they finally actually did lay a glove on him, it gets negated by a penalty. Shane, your boy Carter, gets a sack, and it's negated by a penalty yet again. He's still waiting for his first solo one. Dex finally shows up on the stat sheet with a sack. Bang, he gets taken. That one taken away from him because of a penalty. It's just ridiculous. The consequence of not bringing Williams down, despite the fact that he was pressured 15 times during the game, was he rushed for 63 yards, which is the second highest output of his career, only beaten by a game last year where he hit 70. It's just another game where we've got to talk about the bad, despite the fact that there were good moments. And I think we have to give out a few props to a few players. Slayton had a bounce back game, and I would love to just watch that one-handed catch again and again. I think that's the best one-handed catch that I've probably seen a Giants player make since the Odell Beckham catch against the Cowboys. Just the way that he plucked that at the air was very reminiscent, actually, because it was behind him. Theo Johnson kind of turned into a bit more of a reliable pass catcher. 7 receptions on 8 targets, I think it was, for 75. Flanagan Fowles was an absolute battering ram, and would have also had a 4th down stop if it wasn't for Flock kind of whiffing on his tackle and hitting him out the way. And the very last point that I'll make on the game, can we please just make these uniforms our road uniforms? Because they are elite. Absolutely elite versus, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got the dark jersey up there and the white and the red, and yeah, it's fine. It's very plain. You look at those white legacies, and it was just absolutely phenomenal. Before we move on to the game, I'm going to open it up to you two. Is there anything you want to talk about? Sorry. Before we move on to the Daboll thing, sorry. Is there anything about the game you want to kind of touch on there?
No, I mean, I think for me, look, I know in our group chat there was a lot of frustration and anger over losing that game. But for me, I didn't care losing on Sunday. Like that's where I've got to with the Giants recently, where I just don't care. I know what's coming. I know that we're going to lose. And like when we lost on Sunday, like when we were 20-10 up, I instantly thought, "Hey, we're going to fuck this one up this week." There was no confidence at any point that we were coming away with the dub whatsoever. And like, I know it's a little bit extreme, but like, is it the stages of grief where they say you've got anger, you've got denial, and in the end, you've just got acceptance? And that's where I've been at with the New York Giants for the last few weeks. I've accepted we're shit. I've accepted we're going to lose. There was no apparent integrity or accountability within the organisation, with Shane Bowen still being in charge. As of Sunday evening and even yesterday morning when we obviously woke up, Daboll was still in charge. And I was just like, you know what? This organisation don't give a fuck. Neither do I either. Like, I've got bigger things to get me down over than the same results constantly, year on year, bar one season that was obviously just a bit of a fluke and a lucky schedule, or whatever you want to call it. But for me, I think losing Sunday, I was just like, I was watching it. Seeing we lost, I was like, that was more
very similar to the mental space that I was in last week, in the terms of that kind of, why should I care because you clearly don't kind of thing. Kev, thoughts? Just some quick thoughts on the game.
Yeah, I mean, I was out with family and stuff, so I got back about 7:30, 8 o'clock, about 8 o'clock actually, and I was watching the game back sort of on delay. Turned my phone on silent, trying not to look at anything. I was sitting up in the man cave, and I was like having a beer, watching the game, fast forwarding, and I'm just like Shane says, I'm sort of like, I wasn't enjoying winning because I kind of knew what was going to happen. And I'd made early on, I'd made like pros and cons, goods and bads and stuff like that. But I think like the overall takeaway from the game is like, this phrase gets used a lot, but the Giants once again snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Brilliant moments from Dart, Slayton, and Burns were just wasted by late game collapses again, coaching missteps, and another defensive breakdown. I mean, it's the theme of the season continues, lack of discipline, poor situational execution, and just the sheer inability for this team to close out games from a winning position. I sound like a broken record. It's just, like Shane said, it's inevitable at this point. But I suppose that's why we're sitting here today with the coach fired. Yeah,
exactly. It is exactly that. You do kind of it's going through the motions, isn't it? It's like that circle of giants sort of thing, where it just. But now we don't even have to do it in season. We can just do it in game. We can just go to like no expectation. Oh, wait a minute, the Giants are being a little bit frisky. oh, there's an injury. Oh, we've lost again. We can just move it to a game thing rather than a week by week thing now, or a season by season thing. It's just, it's not good. And as Aaron rightly says, Dart had some really, really good throws, and he is the only reason to watch. And it did get to a point watching it on Sunday where there were little cheers coming out of those touchdowns, but as Shane said, they were hollow in a way, because you were waiting for the real giants to turn up, and that's what happened. Obviously, the big news now is that yesterday around 5:45, it was leaked by a few of the insiders. I know Garofolo, Schefter, and Rappaport all had it around that time, that the Giants were going to fire Brian Daboll after 3.5 seasons. Obviously, earlier on in the day, Jordan Renan did put a post out saying that everything was pointing towards business as usual, and that the Zoom call that Brian normally has on a Monday at 1:25 was scheduled to go ahead. And then obviously that would have been about 40 minutes after the kind of leak came out. Brian Daboll now finishes his tenure as a head coach with a record of 20 wins, 40 losses, and 1 tie, giving him a .336 winning record. His first season with the Giants saw them finish 9-7-1, which gave them their first playoff berth since 2016, the infamous boat pick year. That season also finished with Brian Daboll being named Coach of the Year. And since then, the Giants have gone an abysmal 11-33, giving him a 25% winning percentage across 2.5 seasons. Daboll did look like he would last the season a few weeks ago. Dart seemingly thriving under his tutorage, but the cracks were starting to show. He could have hung his hat on that and carried that on for the rest of the year, but it would seem that the final straw for ownership was Daboll not protecting his new quarterback, who obviously got hurt during that loss on Sunday, and is now in the concussion protocol. Kev, I'm going to come to you first on this, and we're just going to go through a few questions and a little sort of back and forth in bits. But the firing of Daboll was the correct choice. I think we were unanimous in that we do believe that it was the correct choice for the Giants. How do you think we will look back on his tenure? Because, I've gone through a few things there, but I haven't even touched on stuff like the wink drama, the lax discipline, the constant switching of play calling, the soft training camp practices, sideline rage, uninspiring coordinator hires. Like there's a long list of stuff for Brian Daboll. And yes, he was a first-time head coach, but how are we going to look back at his tenure, do you think? I think he's still on mute.
Oh.
There we go. We got you.
1 2 1 2.
Yeah.
Internet's playing up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, just going to say, like, a little bit mixed emotions. I mean, the first season was phenomenal, but like you mentioned some of it there. I mean, he's just continued to blow double-digit leads, which you can't do. I mean, like, he's had a bit of a quarterback carousel as well, with Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, and he's finally got his guy, Jackson Dart. And like you said, he sort of like, exposed him to getting hurt on constant plays. I mean, Jackson Dart's been checked for concussion 4 times alone this season, which you just can't do in this day and age with your franchise quarterback. To be honest, the offense has been really stagnant. I mean, I think I read somewhere only the Panthers have scored fewer points per game in the last 3 seasons. And we've seen how bad they've been. I mean, the sideline meltdowns from the medical tent incident is a little bit unforgivable, where he picked up $100,000 fine. The Mick Martindale thing was shocking, like the way that sort of came out. Replaced Mick Martindale with Bowen, whose defense has struggled massively. kept taking the play calling duties away from Kafka, giving them back to him, giving to Tierney. It's just all been such a mess. I mean, every year we've just spiraled out of control, and it just hasn't seemed to be able to pull it back. I mean, you mentioned about the records. I mean, was it 11-33 overall since 23, 5-22 since 2024? We're 5-17-1 in AFC East. I mean, you play your rivals, you want to try and beat them. I mean, the Giants hold, what is it, 2 unwanted records, 10 straight losses last season, and currently we're on 11 straight road losses this season. I mean, it's just been untenable. I mean, those things. The big things for me is the heatedness on the sideline, falling out with staff members and players. But one thing that really got me annoyed was his press conferences. They really didn't sit well with me. The way he was so dismissive and so just matter of fact and wouldn't give you proper answers. So, I mean, that first season was a bit of mirage. If anything, it hindered the rest of the 3 years doing so well in that first year, sort of give us all a sort of fake falseness of how good we were when we really weren't really that good. Yeah, he's supposed to be a quarterback whisperer, and he just proved to be anything but that. So it's just been really frustrating.
Shane, we all know that obviously you weren't a proponent for bringing Brian Daboll back in the off season. We covered that last week, and we were all quite vocal last week about what we thought should happen if this goes badly. And I think that the game actually went worse than any of us thought it was going to do, because we weren't expecting us to lead at any point. So the collapse was as inevitable as it was actually worse than anything we kind of said. But do you feel like you've been proven right, or do you feel like we've been robbed of half a season because this is something that should have happened during the off season?
I mean, I won't get saying I feel right or vindicated. At the end of the day, I still stand by that he shouldn't have been brought back in January. I mean, just to touch back on something previously you mentioned, obviously Dart got injured the weekend, and we reckon that's what sealed the fate. But that's interesting when you take into effect the kind of rumours started to come out on Saturday. The only thing that would potentially get Daboll fired is Jackson Dart getting injured. For me, I think he should have been sacked after Denver. There's more justification for sacking him after the Denver collapse than there was this collapse this past Sunday, in my personal opinion. In regards to how we'll look back on Daboll's tenure, I mean, for me, conflicted probably comes to mind. Everyone knows I've not been a fan of this organisation for long. I'm approaching what year in 2025. They're 8 years into being a Giants fan. So on one hand, I'll always have a bit of a soft spot for Daboll because he's the first head coach that brought me, I should say, a playoff season. Not just a playoff season, but a playoff win as well. So I'll always have that to be thankful of Daboll. I do wonder how the season might have panned out if Neighbours didn't go down injured and Scat didn't go down injured. Maybe Jackson Dart might not have been as aggressive as he had been if he knew he had Scat, who, as we all know, runs into lampposts when he was younger and can probably take them. It's a little bit better than Jackson can. But I do think that, look back on it, it is a case of like, well, why didn't we just do this in January? Realistically, and we should have cleaned house in January, and we've chosen not to. But I will always have kind of a soft spot for that, as I say, for that reason. And if I ever had the opportunity, it'll never happen. But I'd love to sit there in front of Brian Daboll, like the gloves are off kind of vibe, just sat around the table, no lights on, but no cameras, and just say to him, what went wrong? Because that first season was meant to be the season where we went, fucking hell, we've got Summit here, we've got a head coach, we've got a head coach who's going to be aggressive, who's going to get for it on, these fourth downs, who's going to go for 2 to get the game-winning victory rather than just setting for a field goal and taking it to overtime. We kind of felt like we had a head coach and someone that could be representative of what the fans were and what the fans wanted. And then after that first year, it just went to shit. And I'd just love to speak to Dave and say, after that first year, what went wrong? I mean, for me, I think the writing was starting to be on the wall after what happened with Root Martindale. I think Kev's got bored of what I'm saying. But no, I think that I understand why Wink, why he was being undermined by Wink. Let's be honest. But I do think that was the beginning of the end for me. In all honesty, that was where things really started to take a little bit of a turn as to what Daves was trying to do. But yeah, look, I'd just love to know kind of what happened after that year one, because everything went from being so promising to pretty much being so bleak beyond what we could have imagined.
Yeah, exactly. Kev's internet has gone down, so apologies for the technical issues earlier. And he has now disappeared, so Shane and I will try and run the fort until he can get back on. But there is another man at the forefront of all of this who was mentioned in the statement. And the ire of the fan base now has obviously shifted to him, and that is General Manager Joe Schoen, who was brought in during the same off-season. A lot of people have said that the two are tied to the hip and that, if one goes, the other should go. He is the man who chose to hire Daboll. And I can kind of understand that. I have my own thoughts on it, but we'll get into those in a minute. In the post on Giants.com regarding yesterday's firing, there was a segment from Mara and Tish that wasn't in the statement. It was only on the post that was on the website that said, "We feel like Joe has assembled a good young nucleus of talent. We look forward to its development." And then they stated that Joe would remain in his position, would lead the search for a new head coach. Like I said, we've all got different opinions on this. I have a specific question I want to ask you, probably after I've let you unleash a little bit on Joe Schoen, because I'm pretty sure that's what's coming. And I'm sure that you'll be able to shoot me down on that question. But it's also something that has been brought up in the comments as well. Holty said views on Joe Schoen likely keeping his job. And even the Patriots touchback guys who have jumped in have said, "Evening, lads. I don't understand why Joe Schoen is still your GM once Daboll got the boot. Surely if you blow it up, you do it at the end of the season. Is that now going to hamper Dart's development?" That might be something we talk about in a bit as well. Oh, Kev's back with us, hopefully a little bit more stable. But Shane, we will start with you. Let's have scorched earth explanation on why you are not on the side of doing what they are doing, which is keeping Joe Schoen.
Yeah, so what I'm about to say, it's nothing personal against Joe Schoen. I don't hate Joe Schoen. I just don't think Joe Schoen should be kept on as a general manager for the New York Giants under a new head coach. And I don't think he should leave that. Now, for me, it was a mistake to keep Joe Schoen. It will be a mistake, sorry, to keep Joe Schoen here. He's got 1 year left on his deal. Can any of us honestly say, hand on heart, that's us two in the studio, Mayo and Dan, who are always on with us, and the listeners and the viewers, hand on heart to him and say he's done enough to deserve an extension? Because if he has, why are you then sacking his head coach that was his guy? And let's not forget that this is his guy that he knew from Buffalo over how many years. So now he's going to be expected to bring in a new head coach who he either doesn't know, hasn't worked with, or hasn't worked with enough for a few years, I should say. Now, money talks, yes. But I genuinely think head coaches are going to have reservations about coming to MetLife Stadium under the New York Giants, knowing that their GM could very well be gone in 12 months' time if he doesn't get an extension. And then you're going to potentially have a head coach working under a GM that didn't hire him when the new guy comes in. And then we're just going to be in this vicious cycle, a tornado, so to speak, just going round and round in circles. Now, this will be, if they keep Joe Schoen on, the third time the Giants have changed head coach while keeping the GM. In 2015, Tom Coughlin left. They kept Jerry Reese, who hired Ben McAdoo, and both were gone in 2017. We jump forward 2 years to 2019. Pat Shermer was gone. They kept Dave Gettleman, but they then hired Joe Judge. Again, both were gone just 2 years later. So what makes you think 2025 is going to be any different when it hasn't worked in the past? Stupid decisions lead to stupid results, and this will go down as a stupid decision, in my opinion. Now, if we want to look at his draft picks, 2022, Thibodeau, Neal, Robinson, Azudu, Flop, Bellinger, Belton, McFadden, Davidson, McKethan, and Beavers. Tibbs, he's probably, I wouldn't put Tibbs in a hit category, Kev's got bored of me again. I won't put Tibbs in the hit category, but I certainly wouldn't put him in the miss category. I just think he's not performing like a 5th overall pick. We all know Evan Neal's going to be gone. Wandale Robinson, I'd keep him, but it depends what it's going to cost. There's no doubt about it. He's having a great year, but we don't need a slot to compete with this team. We need someone to compete with Malik Neighbours on the outside. Azudu, Davidson, McKeffen, Beavers, I'm not going to say anymore. Right now, Flott looks like the best pick of that draft class, and we're only seeing the best of him now. You know, we've seen regression under Bellinger. Belton's a bit of a ball hawk, but he's not someone who is going to light the world up. He's all right as a depth piece, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And McFadden, obviously he had the season-ending injury in week 1, unfortunately. But again, could you upgrade on him? 100%. Then we're going to move to the dreaded 2023 draft class. Banks, John Michael Schmitz, Hyatt, Gray, Hawkins, Riley, Owens. 3 of those players are no longer on the roster. I don't know if Eric Gray exists anymore. I think, is he still pupped?
Yeah, he's pupped.
Hyatt, apparently he dresses but hardly ever sees the field. JMS, I feel like we're playing him just because he's the only centre and we took him in the 2nd round, and I don't think nobody wants to see Banks on the field anymore, and that's your first round pick that you actually moved up for. So that is an awful draft class. 2024 draft class. Neighbours, Nubian, Phillips, Johnson, Tracy, Mursell. Mursell was mainly drafted as a special teams player. He's flashed at times, but he's definitely not a starting caliber linebacker. Tracy had a good rookie year, has kind of lost the position to Scatterbo, and he found himself on the field as much again now due to that injury. But again, he's not really doing much when he's on the field. Theo Johnson's not developing like we all wanted him to. Phillips and Nubian have regressed this year. Both of them are performing really poorly. And Neighbours, okay, you give credit to that draft pick. Was it a difficult draft pick to make? I think most of us would have made that draft pick if we're honest. And then you can't really go into this year's draft class too much. But again, Carter, Dart, Alexander, Scatterbo, and Bo, Fidoni, and Corey Black. So again, you know, it's a little bit too soon to comment on that 2025 draft class. But some might turn around and say, but 2025, you found your franchise quarterback. That's a win, ain't it? To an extent, it is, yes. But we all said we do what we do at number 3. We all said, don't get cute. Tech Carter. Shane did the obvious. You don't get no credit for that, in my opinion. But in regard to diving into the pick of your franchise quarterback, cast our minds back a little bit. What did Joe Shane want to do in that draft? He wanted to move up to number 1 and take Cam Ward. He didn't want to take. I'm not going to say he didn't want to check Jackson Dart, but his plan was to try. He did everything he could to move up to number 1 pick and take Cam Ward. So you've got to keep that in mind. And like people have said rightly on Twitter, Daboll pushed for Dart. And I think Shane even said as much in the draft room on draft night when he said something along the words to the effect of, if you guys have the conviction that he's the guy. But that doesn't make it seem like Joe Shane's draft pick, in my opinion. That makes it seem like he's kind of putting it out there that, okay, Daboll, if this is your guy and you're willing to put your coaching career potentially on the line for it. So, you know, I can't give Joe Shane credit for drafting Jackson Dart when, if you think about it, he wanted to give up whatever he needed to give up to move up to number 1. It was only because Tennessee said, we are not moving whatsoever. And there's even a video call on draft night where Joe calls him up jokingly saying, I'm just seeing if there's anything. And I think it was half-heartedly done as a joke, but I think it was half-heartedly done as a last-ditch attempt. Holty, you could take full blame for this then, to be honest with you, mate.
So Holty's saying that he drunkenly told Joe Shane to draft forward when he met him in Munich for the audio listeners.
So, yeah, you know, where you could turn around and say, yeah, he gets credit for drafting a potential franchise quarterback. You need to remember what his initial plan was. And kind of Jackson Dart was a pivot more than anything else. Good look at free agents. Some notable guys that he signed, in my opinion. Glowinski, Akereke, Nacho, Gillen, Locke, Singletary, Illuminor, Runyon, Holland, and Adebo. Now, of those, I'd say Glowinski didn't live up to the hype. Singletary hasn't lived up to the hype. Locke didn't. I understand the Locke contracting we needed, but when he was put into the position to play, he didn't really show us anything other than a fluky win over the Colts. Illuminal's worked out. Nacho, you could turn around and say we should be cutting him for the cap savings. Gillen's been a good signing. For me, the jury's out on Runyon. I wasn't overly impressed with him last year. I think he's having a bit of a mediocre year this year. I'm sure if Mayo's listening in the comments, he can feel free to tell me if he disagrees with Runyon, if he thinks he's been a good free agent pickup. I don't know what you two guys think about that. Holland and Daboll, for me, the jury's still out. Like the draft class, it's a little bit too early to say how they're going to translate. But then you look at what he's let walk that are now having great seasons elsewhere. Kev, you've joined at the wrong time. Julian Love, Saquon Barkley, McKinney, Jones, Leonard Williams. You know, you look at the players he's let walk out of this organisation and they're going on to have pretty solid and good careers on other teams. And also, for me, the fact that he's unwilling to move on from players that are either past it or have got no future on this roster. Neil, Hyatt, Banks, Gano, to name four. Gano was a perfect cap casualty this past summer. We could have said, I think it's about $3 or $4 million. He's had injury after injury, and I'm going to come on to that in a little bit more in a moment. But Neil, Hyatt, Banks, even Bellinger, they're players that have been constantly linked with trade talks, and we know teams have called up about them because we've pretty much been told as much. We even found out last week that the Colts called the Giants about Deontay Banks, yet we've decided to keep him. So that's something that was against me. Kickers. Now, roster management and kicker situation the last couple of years since Gano has been nothing short of embarrassing, in all honesty. We've had Gano, York, Bullock, Crosby, Joseph, McTominay, Koo all have to dress for us and kick field goals. That's 7 kickers in 3 years. That's kind of unheard of at the NFL level. You know, the roster management has been diabolical in the kicker department. And even this past weekend, if you look at the wide receiver situation, I think Bobby Skinner made a point about this on Twitter. You've got Gunnar Olszewski playing wide receiver this past weekend, not Hyatt, not Lil Jordan Humphrey, who's shown that he has some form of chemistry with Dart. Again, that's roster mismanagement. And I'll end on this note. 2022, Joe Shane's first year, was hands down his best year. Yet for me, feel free to argue it, but I'll stand on this. That was a playoff team that was from the previous general manager's roster, not Joe Shane's roster. And all those points combined for me are the reason why I think it would be wrong to let Joe Shane stay in this role and hire a new head coach.
And I think it's fair enough. I think, none of the points that you've made are in any way something that can be misconstrued as a different way. I think there are lots of pluses, but there are obviously lots of minuses to everything when it comes to Joe Shane. Kev's camera's disappeared, but I don't know if he's still here. But just as a kind of, there he is. Kev, I just want to bring you in while your internet is behaving. Hopefully it's a bit better in the house than it is in the man cave. Although someone did say, seemingly from the cupboard under the stairs, a bit Harry Potter-esque, shall we say. But you, I think, are very, very much on my level with things, in the fact that I could quite happily see this going either way and still be happy either way to a degree. I think that I could probably take solace if he stayed, and I could find solace if he went as well. But give me a little bit of a reasoning. Obviously, Shane's gone through all the reasons that he shouldn't stay. Give me a few reasons on why you think it's actually a good idea for him to stick around.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully Shane went into in full detail about his personal vendetta against Joe Shane when I was off. Hopefully, yeah. Character assassination over there going on in my absence. But I joke. Again, it's a case, you hit me on the head, Craig, as in, like, either way I would kind of be fine, but I am sort of more leaning towards, keeping him for now. And it's not to say, like, now he's been given a stamp of approval for years to come. It might be a case of the Mar and Tish family will reevaluate this at the end of season when, they're in the full head coach decision mode, and they decide, okay, this head coach is coming in, but we might want a new GM to go along with that head coach. There's nothing set in stone just yet. But I think, like, what it does do now, it does give a bit of continuity amid chaos. Do you mean? Because everything is so up in the air and so crazy at the moment. that it kind of gives a bit of continuity there, someone to steady the ship, so to speak. Because let's face it, Tish hasn't been well for a very long time. He's sort of taken a massive step back years ago, and John Mara is having to take a step back as well. So having that sort of figurehead of the organization now is probably a good thing, and they obviously believe in him as well. I mean, but some of the points are like unlike past regimes, under Pat Shermer, Joe Judge, the team's not devoid of talent, and we're not buried by bad contracts. We have a very youthful team, promising players. We have a lot of cap flexibility. We have legitimate building blocks. We're a lot stronger now. In contrast to the previous years when we were in cap hell and we didn't have a cornerstone franchise QB. Which Jackson Dart is, and Jackson Dart going along with Malik Neighbors, Cam Scatterboy, like there's things to work on there in offense. And these are pieces. I mean, John Mara was he emphasized, we feel like Joe Judge has assembled a good young nucleus of talent, and we look forward to his development. So he obviously sees, Joe Judge has done things behind the scenes and brought in players to develop. John Mara and Steve Chase both came out with quotes, yesterday saying, results haven't been what we want, but we take full responsibility and look forward to the kind of success our fans can expect. Tish said these are difficult decisions, but this is the right move to allow us to move forward. And so I think by keeping Sheehan, the ownership have showed that they trust in his long-term plan, and they understand that progress isn't sort of overnight, and it is more of a long-term sort of like feel. And this is a very young roster. I mean, he's not devoid of mistakes either. I'm sure you talked about some of the drafts that were made, like Evan Neal, Deontay Banks, Jalen Hyatt. The only sort of kickback I'll have with those are, you are right in saying that they should have cut ties with him sooner. I 100% agree with that, and that is a mistake on his part. But let's all be honest about those draft processes. I mean, Evan Neal was considered the fourth or fifth best player in that whole draft in 22, consensusly by everyone. So taking someone who was considered the best left tackle in that draft, and he didn't pan out, that for me, stuff like that isn't sort of seen as a mistake, because everyone thought he was the best left tackle in the draft. And the same with, to a certain extent, Deontay Banks. Deontay Banks was seen as the third best cornerback in that draft. And I think a lot of mock drafts had him going early 20s, and we took him at 25. So, and even Jalen Hyatt was considered an end of first round pick. A lot of people had him going to the Chiefs at pick 31 and stuff. So yes, they didn't work out, and it looks now to be bad selections. But at the time, consensusly, they were considered very, very good selections. The free agent stuff has been hit and miss, which is frustrating because you're supposed to know what you get in free agents because they play in the league. But the Russell Wilson experiment has been a disaster, because he kind of we all thought he would come in and be a nice sort of foil for Dart to learn behind, but he shows that he is shot. But again, it was a decision that was made sort of with his hands tied to a certain extent, because we had no quarterback, and we needed to bring him in. But I will say, this job has to be one of the most desirable head coaching jobs in the league. So a head coach coming in, I think can work with Sheehan because of the talent that he started to build on the offense and the defense, for how inept it's been on the field. If you look at it, it's got the players there to be a top defense. We all thought defense would be the thing we would lean on this year. So he's brought in players like Holland and Daboll, the trade for Brian Burns and stuff like that. He's brought in all these players, and it should be playing better than what it is. That's not on the GM. For me, I put that firmly on coaching. But I think, it comes down to the owners. They believe in Joe Sheehan and the way he's modernized the whole sort of scouting department and bringing sort of that scouting department into the new NFL, the modern NFL, if you like. So he's doing a lot of things behind the scenes that we're hoping will see fruition in years to come.
it's very easy to tie them together as in head coach and GM. They came in together from Buffalo, so it's very easy to tie them in. But we see around the league all the time, coaches get fired, GMs stay, or GMs leave and coaches stay. We see it all the time. So it was, for Daboll to be sacked, for me, wasn't a case of we'll get Sheehan out straight away. Sheehan has developed a very, very good working relationship with the owners. And I think, for me, he has made mistakes. He's learned. He's used the last 4 years as learning experience. But for me, he's done just enough to take the team going forward and to be allowed to bring in a new head coach. And for me, the way I look at it, I mean, like, the next hire of the head coach could define Giants football for the next decade. I believe Joe Sheehan has given stability in youth in the roster, good contracts. Like, our best players are the highest paid, that's what it should be. I don't believe we've got anyone who's paid a silly amount of money that isn't performing, who I believe won't perform going forward. I believe that contracts have been handed out correctly, and I just feel that he's had his growing pains, and now it's time for him to step up now as the leader of this whole franchise and bring in someone who can also lead players on the field.
So here was what I was going to say while we were talking before the episode, and then I decided to save it for the podcast, and that is that we can quite easily, and this does go both ways, fair enough, it does go both ways. We've now got rid of Brian Daboll. We've just given it off a myriad of reasons for certain things that have worked, but we've also given off a myriad of reasons for things that haven't worked. Evan Neal, hire. I'm not going to go through the whole list. You've both said it. Could it be that Joe Schoen's drafts have actually been good, but the coaching staff has failed to get the best out of them? We've spoken about some of the free agent moves. These are players within the league. These are players that we had on our buzz cards. These are players we've spoken about in free agency podcasts pre-season, and we've been like, God, I'd love it if we got Holland. I'd love it if we got a Daboll. I'd love it if we ended up getting other players. There are some misses. Don't get me wrong. There are misses. But imagine, like, Evan Neal hasn't worked out, but what if Brian Daboll wasn't the coach? We have got Carmen Brasillo, and it should work with Brasillo because I think he's done wonders for our offensive line. But what if Deonte Banks actually is a good cornerback, but Brian Daboll has no idea how to coach him and how to communicate or how to get, with Banks and kind of thrash this out? So my argument is, if you have, because a GM is less front-facing, he has less pressure on him outside the fan base. Does it get to a point where you kind of always give the benefit of the doubt to the GM unless he's done something drastically wrong, because a completely different coaching staff could get a completely different result with the players that have so-called failed under the previous regime? On,
I think just quick.
I said that to him just as he's had a swig there, but I'm just because I know that you're kind of on my level, Kev. I'm just intrigued to know what Shane thinks about something like that, where what I'm saying is, we all wished it to the stars, but say Mike Vrabel came in, and was able to get a completely different level of play out of these players, we could all be turning around and saying, well, Joe Schoen actually was a genius, and it was Brian Daboll that was holding us back this whole time.
Well, I'll just add one. Sorry, go on, Shane, quickly. Go on. No, go on. I'll just add one thing. Like, the owners, the organization is kind of saying that in the sense that, Joe Sheehan's foundation stays, but the culture must change. I mean, one of the points I didn't make about Brian Daboll was the fact is, like, not holding players accountable. Like it's just too relaxed. All the beat writers say that the preseason training and stuff like that's just too chilled. He's too much of a player's coach. And players just have got away with murder and not being held to account. So I think going forward now, we need a head coach to come in and be a little bit of an authoritarian, or a little bit of a hard ass, for want of a better term, like that overlooks the whole offense and defense and lets the coordinators coach and coordinate and play call. So I think, like I said, so I do think the ownership have gone, yeah, okay, we believe in the foundations Joe Sheehan's laying for bringing talent into this organization, but we need a coach to coach these players and coach them harder than what's been done so far.
Come on, Shane. The floor's yours now after a couple of attempts there.
See, it's a tough one because, like, I do think Deontay Banks can be a player. He showed it in his rookie year. I think the problem is that the scheme doesn't suit him at the moment. In the kind of he's very much a man-to-man, hands-on, play close to the receiver kind of cornerback, which is what Wink's scheme was. Whereas Bowen might play a lot of man-to-man, but he plays the corners a little bit further off than what I think Banks feels comfortable in doing. But then I think it also spoiled because Banks checked out at times and then wasn't held accountable, like Kev said. So Banks has probably kind of thought to himself, I know what the fuck I want. I'm a former first-round pick. I don't make effort. I don't get called out on it. I can do what I want. But in regards to the players that they've drafted and the coaching not getting enough out of them, I understand it. But then why is the general manager not dealt with it sooner? Why is the general manager not turned around and said in January, if John Mara and Steve Tisch believe that I've drafted all these quality players and coaching's the problem, well, let's move on from the coach then. That's the counter argument I'd have to that is that, you know, at the end of the day, Joe Schoen is the general manager. He's responsible for the hirings and the firings. And if somebody's not doing if someone's not doing a good enough job to the point it's jeopardising your career, then I'm sorry, I don't care if you're friends or best mates or know each other from Buffalo and God knows where else. You've got to think of your own career as well.
That's a great point. That is a great point. I mean, I kind of feel like Joe Sheehan, like, you know, maybe this is a learning curve for him. Like, you know, okay, he didn't want to fire a very good friend of his who they came in together, trying to give him every sort of benefit of the doubt. And we are where we are now. I think that's a great point, Shane.
And I think you can quite easily make the argument that it's one of the reasons that Brian Daboll has fallen by the sword is that he didn't take that advice either and get rid of Shane Bowen, where if he would have done that, he probably buys himself a few weeks. But because he didn't do it, he's now the person who's fallen on the sword. And Shane Bowen, for the moment, because anything could happen, Mike Kafka is now in charge and he could turn around and say, you've got the Packers game, and if it doesn't change, I'm going to have to make a change. Like, Mike Kafka could do anything. And actually, you know, I know we're sort of pushing time, but let's talk about Mike Kafka because he is the person who will be the interim head coach now. He's going to replace, obviously, Brian Daboll. It sounds like he will also continue to be the offensive coordinator going forward, which makes perfect sense. You don't want to kind of rock the apple cart there. I do wonder if there is something that he will do in the terms of leaning on somebody else to kind of help him with the game management side of things. On one hand, he has done the head coach thing, albeit in Senior Bowl and in the Shrine Bowl, very different environment, but he does have kind of a head coach experience on the sideline. It's everything else that he really needs to get into and start to understand. He has been interviewed for head coaching positions and a number of them and has been finalists. He's had second interviews. We've heard that there's a potential he might go. Obviously, the Seahawks wanted to interview him for the offensive coordinator position. I think it was last season or the season before. And the Giants rejected that lateral move because they can do so. You can only, obviously, you can't reject it if it's a promotion, but laterals, you're well within your rights if he's under contract. Look, Mike Kafka has got 7 weeks to audition for the Giants, and he needs to try and reinvigorate a team that looks crestfallen at the moment. And you've got players like Dexter Lawrence, who looks like a broken man, and he needs to somehow G him up and get him to a level where Dexter Lawrence is pissed off enough that he's going to start wrecking games again. He also needs to address the issues around the roster. We've just signed our 4th kicker. I'm not sure what that means for Jude McTamanay. I'm not sure what that means for Koo. I'm not sure what that means for Gano. You can't have 4 kickers on the roster. Something's got to give there. He needs to find out what the root cause is for these late collapses, and he needs to address that. And whether that means tough love, then tough love. And he needs to address the penalties because that is something that's just been unacceptable across the board. Kev, I'll come to you first. Interim head coaches very rarely get hired. So chances of him actually being hired at the end of this 7 weeks are slim. But what does he have to do, not only to prove himself to the Giants, but potentially prove himself now to other franchises around the league to say, yes, I can be a head coach?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, like, protect Jackson Dart first and foremost. Keep Dart healthy without sort of taking away his competitiveness, obviously. Do use his legs as a weapon, but don't use it as a go-to all the time. Um, put his stamp on the offense. He can go in now. He came in and he had to learn a new offense because he learned Daboll's offense. So I want to see more wrinkles. I mean, there was more under center from last week. I want to see more of that. Um, you know, I want to see basically focus on discipline and details. Just get rid of the mental mistakes people are having, the misassignments, poor tackling angles. These are all stuff that I want to see him come in and do. I mean, and get this team's confidence up, raise them up. Get better communication. And get the Bowen to play the type of defense that's attacking and can get after people. I mean, it is a test drive. It is a job interview for him, not necessarily for the Giants, like you said, but around the league. He's interviewed really well. Now it's time to show what he can do on the field. I mean, he's got a good reputation across the NFL, but those are the type of things I want to see. Refocus on discipline and the details, protect that Jackson Dart, get the defense to play more aggressive, and basically, keep Dart healthy and the offense ticking.
Shane, obviously, Mike Kafka, one of his first real roles was to take a young quarterback at Kansas City called Patrick Mahomes and nurture him. It would seem that maybe Brian Daboll has been doing more of the nurturing with Dart than Kafka has to a degree, but Kafka is the offensive coordinator, so has been calling the plays. What are you looking for over the next 7 games? And how do you think this will affect Dart's progression, I guess? Because we've seen it come on leaps and bounds. Do you feel like there needs to be some little tweaks to the system, or do you think we should mainly just kind of keep it the same, albeit protecting him a little bit better?
Yeah, I'd be tempted more to go that way, to be honest with you. Like, more, it's kind of been working with Dart pretty much. I think all of us are pleased with the way he's been playing, the way he's been developing. We'd like him to reduce the hits a little bit. So why change anything? Like, you got to be mindful as to what you change anyway, because he's not like he's got the best receivers available to him. We've already spoken about the wide receiver depth in previous episodes and this one today. So I wouldn't get changing too much. I mean, for me, Kafka's in a win-win situation. Like, we win. Well, we've got left 7 games, you say. We win 4 of the last 7. Look at him, he's in contention for a head coach job either here or elsewhere. We lose the next 7. He goes into interview in the off-season. It was a mess at the Giants. I did it to help out. I haven't been happy for the last couple of years. I kept trying to get away. They kept blocking me. They promoted me up to assistant head coach. So Mike Kafka really is in a no-lose situation here. He either comes out of this looking like absolutely gold dust and the next best thing, or he comes out of it saying, you know what, it's a mess at that organisation and I just did the best that I could. We've no Malik Neighbours, we've no Cam Scatterby, we've Shane Bowen as my defensive coordinator because they wouldn't let me change him. So Kafka's chilling, really. Like, there's loads of ways Kafka can sell this if it does or doesn't work out. But the main thing I just want to see is whatever happens on Sunday, I want to see him answer questions direct, not dance around them. Not come out with the bullshit. Go to bed. That's on me. We need to look at the tape. I don't want to hear them fucking words ever again by any head coach, to be honest with you. So that's the one thing I want to see is him come out and say, yeah, this is what went wrong, or this is my thinking behind this, and just seeing competitive, hard-nosed football with accountability. If Tay Banks is on the field and doesn't make a play, pull him. Fucking get him off that field. Do not let him step back on that field again for the rest of the day. Let him know, look, this is not good enough. You're not stepping back on this field again this week. I want to see an improvement in the week during training. If it ain't, guess what? You're not on the field the week after either. So I just want to see some accountability more than anything else.
100%. I'm wary of time, and I know that we've got a couple of questions in the chat from Steve and Kieran, so I'm going to make a note of those, and we'll look at those during the preview episode, because one, I think is very much going to be something for the preview episode, And the other thing is the way that we want to try and do these podcasts going forward is try and move away from the offense, defense, and open it up to a bit more of a generalized conversation like we've had. So I think that the other question is very, very, very good. For now, I am going to just kind of wrap this up. It's been a little bit of information overload, I guess, because of everything that we've got to try and cover. There is plenty of other stuff we could have got into about, what happens with Shane Bowen as we go forward. If Mike Kafka finds it difficult, what should he do at play calling wise? Like, there's so much more. We haven't even spoken about Mara and Tish either. And we'll try and get those throughout the next sort of few weeks and try and get those conversations going. But for now, that is all the time that we have this week. We will be back on Thursday for the preview of the Packers. Obviously, if you do have any questions for us, you can send it to us on X, on the DMs, bigblueukirl@gmail.com. Send us an email. The emails are linked with my main email account, so I always see them. So feel free to send any questions through and we'll answer them. And that will be kind of how we try and move these episodes along. Anything to add before we go, guys? Because this has obviously been a slightly different episode, and now it's all out in the open. We can say that Brian Daboll's tenure is over and we're now moving forward with Kafka. And I don't know, I suppose my last question as we go is, do you have any renewed hope for the rest of the season, or are you kind of accepting that we just have to watch what we watch for the next 7 weeks? Or 7 games, because we've still got the bye week as well.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this would be an episode we'd have after the Denver collapse. I thought we wouldn't have this kind of episode until the season ended, in all honesty. I didn't think the Giants would make a change in season after the Denver collapse. In regards to the rest of the season, it is what it is. Key things I'm watching for is hoping there's about 3 or 4 quarterbacks that look absolutely fucking elite, and we have a high draft pick. We can trade back, we can get a first next year, maybe some additional pieces, and kind of, give us some hope that, okay, if we're going to lose, hopefully we can trade back, get a few more draft picks and give the new head coach more ammunition to mould this team into the team that he already wants. Because like Kev said, it is going to be a very appealing job, in my opinion, despite everything we've said. You've got an ownership who trusts you to probably steer the Titanic into an iceberg and still keep it afloat, if we're honest. We've got a stud quarterback, stud wide receiver, what could be an elite running back, in my opinion. I think Scatterbo could, like, for his rookie contract, can really ball out, and then the defensive pieces. So, I do think it's going to be a really, really appealing job for whoever the head coach is, and if you get multiple firsts as well.
Happy days. I'll just add that, it's definitely worth watching. I'm really interested to see how Jackson Dart's used under Mike Kafka's tutelage and head coaching, because, in that wet, cold conditions in Soldier Field, he looked outstanding dropping back, and he looked like a real natural under center play action pass and quarterback. Some of the throws he threw were like tethered, just lovely over the linebackers or nice outrights. So I'm really interested to see how that is going forward, and I want to see Abdul Carter step things up as well. I hope Shane Bowen has something lit under him, because we really need to see something change on the defensive side of the ball. And also, like, in-game management, I'm really interested to see how Kafka does, because Daboll was awful at that. That was one of his real big flaws, was in-game management, time-wise, just about the type of plays to call. And so I'm interested to see. So there's stuff to watch for the rest of the season. It's not all dead and buried, but that high draft pick does look appealing now, but we're not quite on the train yet, are we?
Give it until after the bye. Shane's bye week evaluation of the tank train is coming. As always, remember to like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already. You can also hit the bell at the bottom to be notified of when you go live if you are subscribed. Follow us on all the socials in the description down below, and please do rate us on your podcast platform of choice. My thanks, as ever, go to Shane and to Kev for joining me. All of you in the comments watching along, we appreciate it. We are signing off. Until next time, let's go Giants.